In a small, picturesque village nestled in the heart of the French countryside, a stone house stands proudly at the corner of a quiet alley. This is where Pierre, an elderly man with white hair and a gaze often lost in thought, lives. His life has been full, and each day he sits on a bench in his garden, watching the leaves fall slowly from the trees, as if time is slipping away from him. However, on this day, something unusual is about to happen. A soft, almost imperceptible sound rises behind the rusty gate. Pierre looks up and sees a large Rottweiler, its eyes gleaming with curiosity and fatigue. The animal seems lost, just like him, but something in its gaze immediately captures Pierre's attention. His blurry memories, clouded by Alzheimer's disease, overwhelm him, but the human instinct for connection, one that transcends time and loss, compels him to open the gate. "You're lost too, aren't you?" he murmurs, his trembling voice betraying an emotion he cannot name. He slowly opens the barrier, allowing the dog to enter. Pierre has lived alone for several years since the death of his wife, Marguerite. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, is now permeated with silence, broken only occasionally by the ticking of the old clock. Each day, Pierre struggles against the gradual erosion of his memory. He often forgets where he is, what he was looking for, and even what day of the week it is. But sometimes a flash of clarity shines through the fog of his mind, and he remembers moments of happiness from the past, like a spark in the night. That evening, as the Rottweiler cautiously steps into his garden, Pierre becomes acutely aware of his deep loneliness. The dog, though large, moves slowly and respectfully, as if it senses the fragility of the man before it. The animal wears a worn collar with no tag, and its gaze, steady and penetrating, seems to be searching for something more. Pierre, with a trembling voice, addresses it. "You're looking for a place to rest, aren't you?" Without hesitation, the dog follows him into the kitchen, where Pierre rummages through the cupboards to offer it some comfort. But all he finds is a piece of stale bread. He offers it to the dog, who politely refuses by turning its head away. Pierre, touched by this dignity, smiles gently. The animal doesn't seem to want food, but it settles near the table, as if it has found its place there. Pierre's house, usually silent, suddenly feels filled with a strange presence. The dog, lying in a corner of the living room, breathes peacefully, while Pierre, sitting in his old armchair by the fireplace, watches it with growing interest. It is the first time in a long while that his thoughts are so clear, so ordered. He finds himself murmuring, "You remind me of Max, my dog when I was a child. He was as big and strong as you." The dog lifts its head slightly as if listening attentively. Pierre, suddenly overwhelmed by nostalgia, continues, his face closing in sadness. "Max, he followed me everywhere, protected me. I think he loved me, but I can't remember the end." As the night progresses, Pierre struggles to keep his eyes open. He eventually falls asleep in his chair, his mind floating between dreams and reality. The Rottweiler, silent, rises and moves slowly through the house, checking each room. When it returns to the living room, it lies next to Pierre, resting its massive head on his feet, like a silent protector. For the first time in a long while, Pierre sleeps peacefully, safe and enveloped in the comforting warmth of this strange presence. Around midnight, an odd sound shatters the silence of the house. The dog wakes suddenly, its ears perked. A low growl rises from its throat, a silent but powerful warning. Pierre, deeply asleep, notices nothing. The dog rushes toward the door, sniffing the damp night air, its eyes fixed on the moving shadows beyond the garden. It spots two figures, quietly approaching the house. The dog lowers its head, ready to defend its territory. Suddenly, the sound of broken branches echoes in the night. The figures stop, hesitating. The Rottweiler lets out a deep, powerful bark that resonates in the stillness of the night. The intruders, clearly frightened, flee quickly, disappearing into the darkness. Pierre wakes, disoriented, but immediately understands what has happened. The dog is watching over him. The next morning, a ray of sunlight filters through the curtains, and Pierre steps into his garden. He sees his neighbor Claire, hurriedly approaching, her face marked with worry. "Have you seen my daughter? She's been missing since this morning," she asks, her voice trembling. Pierre shakes his head, confused, but before he can say anything, the The Rottweiler raises its head, sniffs the air, and barks once. Without a word, it charges out of the garden. Pierre, alarmed, follows it quickly, calling after it. Claire, panicked, runs beside him. The dog leads them to an old abandoned barn at the edge of the village. There they find Claire's little girl, sitting on the ground, frightened but unharmed. The dog, loyal, stays near her, as though to protect her. Claire, in tears, embraces her daughter and thanks Pierre and the dog with deep emotion. Thank you so much. This dog is a true miracle. Back at his house, Pierre sits on his bench, his heart filled with emotion. The dog, calmly lying at his feet, seems to keep a watchful eye on the surroundings. Soon after, Claire arrives with a basket filled with fruits and a homemade cake. I wanted to thank you. And also thank this dog, she says, handing the basket to Pierre. Surprised, he responds modestly, It's not me you should thank, it's him. He came here like magic, and he's the one who watches over us. The little girl timidly approaches the dog and places her hand on its massive head. The dog, initially still, gently wags its tail, accepting the gesture of gratitude. Pierre, moved, gently strokes its head. Watching this scene, he feels a warmth in his heart, a glimmer of hope brushing against his mind. He murmurs, Maybe you're here for a reason too. But the next morning, Pierre wakes with a strange feeling. He looks around searching for the dog, but it is nowhere to be found. The house feels empty. Max, where are you, my big one? He calls, but no answer comes. He steps into the garden, the weight of worry pressing on him. No barking is heard. As he asks his neighbors, no one has seen the dog. Claire, crossing paths with Pierre, tries to reassure him. Maybe he's gone back home, you know? Dogs have an incredible instinct, but these words don't comfort Pierre. The void left by the dog's absence is heavy, almost palpable. 3 days later, as Pierre sits on his bench, a light breeze stirs the leaves of the trees. A faint whimper catches his attention. He straightens up and, to his astonishment, sees a familiar figure. The Rottweiler is back, but this time, it is not alone. At its feet, a small, dirty, and thin puppy timidly follows. Pierre, moved, smiles and murmurs, So that's why you left. You went to find a friend. The Rottweiler gently pushes the puppy toward Pierre, as if to entrust this fragile little life to him. Pierre, moved, picks up the puppy in his arms, gently petting it. You're safe now, little one, he murmurs. And as he opens the door of his house to let both dogs in, he feels less alone, as though a new mission has begun in his life. A glimmer of hope lights up his tired face, and for the first time in a long while, he knows he is no longer alone. Days go by, and each morning, Pierre cares for his two companions. The old Rottweiler and the puppy, so fragile at first, grow together under Pierre's kind care. They share moments of calm and tenderness, and Pierre, little by little, regains some inner peace. The blurry memories that haunt him seem to dissipate, and a feeling of serenity settles into his life. Pierre, once a solitary man lost in his thoughts, finds in these two dogs an unexpected miracle. They are not just animals. They have become his guardian angels, silent witnesses to the love and resilience of the human spirit.